Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the P.A.S. Report podcast. This is your host, Nick Giordano. I'm glad you could join me today. And if you're not already a subscriber, make sure to subscribe and follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also, make sure you check out the P.A.S. Report website, PASreport.com, and share this episode with your family and friends and on social media. You got to inform others about the critical issues that impact our great nation. Kamala Harris did it. She has selected a vice presidential nominee, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, and it really is an astonishing pick. I'll get to that, but we're in the third week of Kamala Harris's coronation, and the Democrat media manipulation, it's nothing short of breathtaking. The media's obsession with Kamala Harris is now reaching new heights, and despite her lackluster performance as a vice president, they're trying to portray her as the savior of the Democratic Party and the United States of America. And what it is a blatant attempt to cover up her failures and rewrite history. You know, the mainstream media is so complicit in this charade, they've abandoned their duty to hold leaders and politicians accountable. Instead, they want to act as the PR agents for the Democrat Party. This isn't journalism. This is propaganda. And the media's role should be to inform the public, not manipulate them. But that's exactly what's going on. Just look at how the press is actively going out of their way to protect Kamala Harris's ascension to the presidency. Not only has there been little scrutiny regarding her failed record, but they've scrubbed any prior negative reporting that they've done. They have no decency. They have no integrity, and frankly, it's pathetic at this point. They're attempting to present Kamala Harris as a blank slate, where she can morph and be anything she wants to be, that she can magically reinvent herself. But that's not the way it works. I mean, think about it. A month ago, the vice president was considered toxic. She was labeled incompetent. As a matter of fact, she was so toxic that Democrats and media pundits were saying that she was a drag on President Biden's reelection. Many of them even suggested maybe it was time to replace her on the ticket. She was a joke. Now, all of a sudden, they're proclaiming her to be the most competent and capable person to lead the United States of America. They proclaim it's a new era. It's the era of Kamala. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. Are they serious? She went from being an incompetent liability to the next JFK in a blink of an eye. And it's remarkable how such an unremarkable person has a sudden transformation, despite the fact that not a single thing has actually changed. When you examine it, nothing has changed with her. And that's the problem with the Republican Party. Following Trump's demolishment of President Biden in that debate, for the first time in a long time, they were on the offense. Even before that, Republicans were on the offense because you got inflation. You have open borders. The global world stage is on the brink of World War III. It was a disaster. But ever since President Biden dropped out of the race and Vice President Harris was coronated, Republicans have went on the defense. And the media, the Democratic Party wants you to forget that the problems really exist, right? Why have Republicans gone on the defense? Why? Has inflation suddenly gone away? No. Has our border been secured? No. Is the world no longer on the brink of World War III? No. In fact, it's quite the exact opposite in all these things I mentioned. Just look at the stock market, suffering from the Kamala crash. People's 401ks getting decimated. Is this just the beginning, or will the market rebound? You now have a lot of indicators that the United States is headed towards a recession, so it's actually going to get worse. When you look at the border, you have the media and the administration saying, well, border crossings are at their lowest levels in 4 years. No, they're not. That is a lie. They're misleading the American public. They're lying to the American public. Over 100 countries were exempted from Biden's border order. So as those that are exempted gain access to the United States of America, they are not counted in the numbers. They're not talking about gotaways and how gotaways have skyrocketed. So our border is still wide open. In fact, we're learning that terrorists, literal terrorists on terror watch lists, were allowed access into the United States despite knowing that they were on terror watch lists. Amazing. And now we're sitting here waiting. As it is a recording, we know Iran's about to launch an attack on Israel. They haven't done it yet as of this recording, but we know an attack is coming. And what's the attack going to look like? And how's Israel going to respond? And is this going to bring us closer to World War III? Okay, everything they've done, they failed at. But despite these failures, they want you to believe that everything is great, that Kamala Harris is great. And if you dare criticize her, if you dare try and tie her to the administration's failed policies, an administration that she is part of, an administration that she is second in command, well, then you're a racist. You hate women, you hate black people, and I guess you hate Indian people as well. It not only shows how corrupt our media is, how corrupt the bureaucracy is, but it also shows how the GOP routinely falls into the same traps, allowing the Democrats and the state-sponsored media to control the narrative, dictate the terms of discourse in this country, and unfortunately, the Republicans allow them to do it. Republicans allow the Democrats to control the terms of the debate. And if the GOP wants to secure victory, it's time they listen, learn, and smarten up. And that's what I want to focus on this episode. I want to highlight the Democrats' control of the narrative and the shortcomings of the Republicans, explain what the GOP needs to do to regain their footing. They have the perfect opportunity right now with the selection of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. And if they're not able to exploit that's a big problem, because this is an election that Republicans should not lose. So hang tight, everyone. I'm going to get to it all when we get back from this quick break. Are you prepared for the unexpected? As a former emergency manager, being prepared is not a choice, it's a necessity, and that's where the Wellness Company comes in. Imagine having the peace of mind that you're equipped to handle any medical crisis, from tick bites to the latest pandemic. The Wellness Company's medical emergency kit is your lifeline, packed with essential medications like ivermectin, emergency antibiotics, antivirals, and more. This kit is your ultimate preparedness solution. The Wellness Company's team of renowned medical professionals, including Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. James Thorpe, Dr. Harvey Risch, Dr. Drew Pinsky, and more. They are truth-seeking doctors, and they have designed a kit that sets the gold standard for safety and prevention. Don't wait for the next crisis to strike. Visit twc.health/PAS and use promo code PAS for an exclusive 10% discount just for being a listener of this show. Prepare today, rest easy tomorrow. Use code PAS at checkout. Welcome back, everyone. So the media and the Democrat strategy, it's clear, it's simple. They're dusting off Joe Biden's 2020 campaign playbook. Hide, shield, and inoculate Kamala Harris as much as they can. And I think Republicans were certainly caught off guard, and I understand that, right? Because even if President Biden was going to step down from the race, which something I said he was going to do a year ago, Republicans were anticipating that a battle would brew for the Democrat nomination, that there would be a battle amongst Democrats about who would be the alternative. I don't think they anticipated that it would simply go to Kamala Harris. However, it did. She didn't have a long, protracted race. And if we look at it, she only needs to do this for about 90 days, even less if we factor in the sweetheart coverage she's going to get this week. She's not going to be pressured to do any interviews this week. And if we look towards next week, it's the Democrat National Convention. Well, now you're talking about less than 80 days. That's all they need to hide her for. Understand that the media, her handlers, her inner circle, they don't trust her. If you've been watching the vice president over the course of the last 3 weeks, they choreograph her every single move. They treat her exactly like they treated Biden, even though she can actually string 2 sentences together. Now, there are some Republicans saying, well, they can't shield her for 90 days. If that's your logic, you better wake up, because you will lose this election cycle. I will guarantee you that. Democrats in the media understand voters, and they understand how to manipulate people. They've been doing it for decades. They're pretty damn good at it. And they've successfully shielded a large number of Americans from Biden's obvious cognitive decline for 4 years, over 4 years. You think that if they can't shield Biden's cognitive decline for 4 years, and they didn't shield it to people like me, anyone that was really paying attention, but they did shield it to Democrat voters. Now, if you think that they can't shield Kamala Harris for less than 90 days, that's a walk in the park for them. She'll do 1 or 2 softball interviews, probably with influencers, not even journalists. She'll make tons of teleprompter appearances at the rallies. She's never going to go off script. Look at how many ordinary Democrats bought into the coronation of Kamala Harris, having zero say in who their nominee would be. Zero say. They weren't upset. They weren't mad. So the Democrats, and I'm talking about ordinary Democrat voters, they're falling in line. Just the other day, CNN headline, Kamala Harris has earned enough votes to win the Democratic presidential nomination. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? The real headline and Democratic Party slogan should be, why bother with voting when we could just decide for you? She didn't earn a single primary vote. It was the party bosses that forced Biden out, they inserted her, and the delegates fell in line. But keep talking about threats to democracy, Democrats, because it really works out well when you do that. Now, I can't recall another case where the formal nomination of a presidential candidate by delegates took place before the actual convention. And while candidates may secure enough delegate support through the primary process, the formal vote and nomination by the delegates usually occurs during the convention proceedings on the first day. But that's not what they're doing here. They're holding the nomination process before the convention even begins because they have to choreograph everything. They don't want a situation where all of a sudden we start seeing floor fights at the Democrat convention. And it shows they don't care about democracy. They don't care about what ordinary voters have to say. And as this coronation is unfolding, where the hell are the Republicans? Now, what do I mean by that? Well, understand, the GOP has failed to keep the issue of Biden's cognitive decline front and center. Instead of seizing the narrative and demanding accountability, they've allowed this issue, which is criminal in my opinion, largest cover-up and conspiracy in American history, they allowed it to go onto the back burner. When in reality, this issue should be front and center. The GOP, especially House Republicans and the Trump team, should be hammering this message every single day. House Republicans should hold daily press conferences. Subpoenas should have already gone out to top officials to preserve all communications about Biden's mental health and turn those over to Congress. Every single cabinet official should testify before Congress about what they knew, when they knew it, what actions they took, and how often they interacted with the president. The White House and the chief of staff should testify. The vice president of the United States should answer questions, should be forced, compelled to come before the House of Representatives and answer the questions. What did she know about President Biden's cognitive decline? When did she know it? What actions did she take? She interacted with him often, we know that. Okay. We have reports that Biden stopped meeting with congressional Democrats, members of his own political party, early in his presidency because the meeting was a disaster. The first meeting they had ended in disaster. So we're talking 2021 there. You had cabinet officials begin questioning Biden's cognitive capabilities as early as 2022 if what Chuck Todd says is right, that a cabinet official said to him that Biden does not have the capabilities to go another 4 years. So this should be a major issue considering that we have a commander-in-chief unable to fill his duties at a time when the world is in such a perilous state. Republicans, especially the Trump campaign, need to hammer the message that it's obvious Vice President Kamala Harris knew about President Biden's cognitive decline. She lied to the American people for 4 years. She lied to us just a few months ago when she was saying that Biden was sharp and authoritative. Are you kidding me? Why aren't you pushing this? And if she said this just a few months ago, how can she be trusted by the American people? See, the reason Republicans should seize on this issue is because 92% of the American people believe Harris was aware of Biden's declining mental health and that she was also behind the cover-up. You need to exploit these issues. You're wasting time with nonsense. Another issue Republicans should exploit is her genuine lack of authenticity, her gross incompetence. Don't waste time on irrelevant issues like her husband's affair with a nanny. Who cares about that? That's not going to change a single person's vote. Focus on the fact that we're paying far more for food to feed our families. We're paying far more for gas to fuel up our vehicles. We're paying far more to heat and cool our homes. That our insurance rates have jumped. That we have less disposable income than 4 years ago, that most people are living paycheck to paycheck, that credit card debt is up over 40%. That's what you need to focus on. And if Kamala Harris becomes the president, well, this becomes the new normal, and it only gets worse. Every time Kamala Harris says that she's going to do something on day one, the immediate response should be, well, why didn't you do it already? You had 4 years. You had a Democrat majority in Congress for the first 2 years, yet you didn't really do anything, and the policies you did push through, like the Inflation Reduction Act, were nothing more than a far-left political agenda that had nothing to do with inflation. The legislation you did get pushed through caused enormous harm to the American people and the United States as a whole. See, push her into a corner, make her either defend the Harris-Biden administration's policies or force her to repudiate them. Let them continue to go with this idea that the economy is great, the economy is wonderful. Let them continue to do that. Because guess what? People know what they're feeling when they go to a grocery store. They know what they're feeling when they go to fill up their cars. So force her to either support the Biden-Harris policies or to repudiate them. And if she defends them, well, then she has to justify their failures. If she repudiates them, she undermines her own credibility. Now, with the insertion of Tim Walz as her vice president, that makes it even more interesting because he is a far-left governor. He was the governor, if you didn't remember, he was the governor that allowed Minneapolis to burn. He was the governor that was in charge during the George Floyd riots. He was the governor that refused to call in the National Guard. He is the governor that wanted to have a snitching hotline for those that weren't masked as his city burned. I want you to think about that for a minute. As his cities were burning, he wanted you to rat on your neighbors if you had too many people in the house, if you were violating the authoritarian COVID decrees. But burning down the city, that was just fine. He is a far-left ideologue. And so now is Kamala Harris reverting back to her 2020 playbook, in which she called for universal health care for the masses, including illegal immigrants, which she said that she wanted to do away with private insurance. She wants mandatory gun buyback programs. She wants a $10 trillion Green New Deal. She's quite happy with the whole bail reform. Cashless bail, allowing criminals to just be re-released into the communities that they already victimized. In fact, she bailed some of them out during the George Floyd riots, encouraged them being bailed out. Some of them went on to commit murder. That's fact. Can't dispute it. She said she wanted to ban fracking and fossil fuel. So paint her as the radical she is. And then you could take it even a step further, right? Why didn't she choose Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania? I mean, this is the sad state that the Democratic Party is in today, that there's such a large segment of anti-Jewish Democrats out there, the anti-Jewish wing of the party that threatened Kamala Harris to pull their support from her if she selects Governor Josh Shapiro. So why not exploit that? Josh Shapiro is far more competent and capable than Tim Walz is. And if Kamala Harris, because now, the reports have it that she's against banning fracking now. That's the new reports that are out there. But then why didn't she select Josh Shapiro as her vice president? Interesting. There are so many different avenues. And I have to give it to the Democrats. I mean, they got cojones, right? Because when it comes to Kamala Harris, you have Harris's team and the media trying to portray her as tough on the border. They had the audacity to put out an ad saying she'd be tougher on the border than former President Trump would be. Now, if you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. Every day, Republicans should be going into communities most impacted by the migrant policies, by the illegal immigration policies, by the open border policies. They should have residents in those communities doing campaign ads about how they are being treated as American citizens, how they are being ignored. Highlight the failure of Democrat leadership in urban centers. Call for change. A Harris presidency is not going to stop these shelters. If Harris becomes president, the shelters multiply. More illegal immigrants come through. So Republicans, especially the Trump campaign, they should announce bold policies. Not only will they shut down the border, not only will they begin deporting those that have entered illegally, particularly the criminals, but any shelters for illegal immigrants have to be moved, and they have to be moved to the elite zip codes until the situation is under control. In fact, Trump should unequivocally state, no longer will our most vulnerable communities be burdened by illegal immigration. These communities have shouldered this issue more than others, and it's not right. The infrastructure is collapsing, schools are failing, crime is rampant. I am announcing that all shelters must be immediately relocated into the elite zip codes, and these affluent areas have the resources to address the issue. The poorest among us shouldn't shoulder this problem alone. That's exactly the statement Trump needs to say out loud. Democrats and the media, they focus on empty platitudes with zero substance. Harris's campaign website doesn't even have a platform page. Explaining where she stands on the issues. And yet nobody's called her out on that. It's crucial for Trump and the Republicans to stay on message. Don't waste time attacking her husband because he had an affair with a nanny. Nobody cares. Don't waste time attacking other Republicans. Focus on blistering attacks on Kamala Harris's role in the cover-up of Biden's mental incapacity. Focus the attacks on her incompetence. Focus the attacks on the administration's failed policies. Focus the attacks on how this is the most radical ticket the United States has ever seen. That you have Governor Tim Walz now being selected, who stated, quote, "One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness," end quote. They are open and avowed socialists. Okay, and it's not just enough to attack the Harris campaign. You have to close with messages of optimism. It can't be doom and gloom. Explain how the American people's lives will improve and America will be strengthened under your leadership. That's all you have to do. Because let's be honest, despite the powerful forces, when you have the Democratic Party, the media, certain elements of big tech, and the bureaucracy against you, those are powerful forces. But even though they have all these powerful forces aligned behind Kamala Harris, let's be honest, given the state of things, Trump and the Republicans should be up by 10, 15 points at the very least. 2022 should have been a wake-up call to all Republicans and conservatives. And sadly, it seems like nobody learned a damn thing. Nobody's speaking to the issues the independents care about. Who will choose this election? Who will decide this election? Republicans keep falling into the same traps. They let the Democrats peddle in fear, and I'm going to explain that when we get back from this quick break. So hang tight, everyone. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. So let's break down Kamala Harris's campaign strategy. It's fourfold. First, they want to keep her on script using lots of words without her actually saying anything of substance. We all know that. Second, brand any criticism of her as racist and sexist. Third, call the other side weird, which is just a bizarre campaign strategy. And finally, attack Project 2025. Tie it into the Trump campaign and congressional races. And I want to focus on that last point for a minute, because the Democrats and the media are branding the Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 as a roadmap to fascism. It's a grave threat to democracy. And the hysteria has made the report radioactive, causing Republicans, conservatives, and even Trump to distance himself from it. And this is what happens. This is what Republicans do. This is why they frustrate me so much, because they often allow their political opponents to control the narrative. They issue a white paper. They expect people to read and understand it, and when people don't, and then they let the left cherry pick and distort its contents. They want to paint conservatives as some type of radical extremists and understand what radical extremism means today. Okay, radical extremists isn't like your far-right fringe group of weirdos that nobody likes. These are the same people that say that the American flag, like people that have American flags hanging, are extremists. Anyone that expresses patriotism. If you have the Don't Tread on Me flag, the Gadsden flag, or the Betsy Ross flag, you're an extremist. If you criticize and push back against government policies, well, you're an extremist. You want people to die, right? We heard that a lot during the coronavirus. So it's actually seemingly normal positions that are now labeled as extremists. And Republicans just let Democrats get away with this. No, what's extreme is letting drag queens read to little children. That's extreme. Taking children to drag shows, that's extreme to me. Reading sexually explicit materials in schools is extreme to me. But instead of Republicans marketing their policy agenda to win over ordinary Americans, instead they react. They go on the defensive. And a lot of times it's too late. The damage is already done. Just look at Project 2025. You want to see how the far-left campaign is working? Well, it's simple. Recent surveys out, 4 in 5 respondents have never heard of Project 2025. So think about that. 4 out of every 5 people they asked said they never heard of Project 2025. Nevertheless, 62% of those respondents thought the agenda would negatively impact their family and their country. I want you to think about that logically for a minute. The overwhelming majority had no idea what Project 2025 was. They never heard of it, but they now believe that it's going to negatively impact their family and the country. And that's aggravating, right? Because Project 2025 was issued over a year ago, April 2023. And before its release, what the Republicans should have done with the Heritage Foundation, and I love the Heritage Foundation, they do phenomenal work, but they should have used focus groups, especially with independents, see what verbiage works best for some of the priorities, particularly the more controversial ones. And then once the report was issued, they should have gone on an aggressive PR blitz to familiarize and sell it to the American people. Okay, a lot of politics is about sales. You have to be able to sell your policies. Instead, they do nothing. Oh, but we issued this in April 2023. Why haven't people read it? Because people don't even know it exists. That's why. So the left puts out posts regarding Project 2025 and how it's going to take away freedom, how it's going to destroy our country. And they share an image with far left talking points linked to page numbers in Project 2025. And I'll just give you one example. They state Republicans want to cut Medicare. They want to take away your Medicare. And they say that you can find this on page 449. Now, you go to page 449, it doesn't mention Medicare. The report explains that the Department of Health and Human Services is funded to the tune of $1.6 trillion, and there is a ton of administrative bloat, wasteful programs, and how our overall health and well-being has actually gotten worse as funding has increased for an agency that's supposed to be promoting health and well-being. You need to go, if you really want to see where the report talks about Medicare, you have to go to page 463. And it talks about how it empowers individuals. It makes Medicare more sustainable for future generations, allows future generations to have access to it. But see, that's the problem. Republicans don't push back. And it's amazing to me because the Heritage Foundation, they issue, it's really, Project 2025 is really called Mandate for Leadership. In every presidential election cycle since 1980, you have conservatives and conservative organizations. So in this one, it was over 300 influential conservatives, more than 50 conservative organizations that all collaborated to craft Project 2025. But there's no universal agreement on everything in Project 2025. It's not like a rubber stamp, like all conservatives and Republicans say, this is exactly what we want to do. But basically, what the Mandate for Leadership is, it's supposed to be a menu option for any Republican administration. Listen, here are some conservative principles. You could pick and choose which ones you may want to prioritize in your administration. That's it. And if people actually read the document, they would see it fundamentally contradicts the portrayals by Democrats in the media. It actually serves as the antithesis of authoritarianism. It promotes policies that actually increase individual liberties and reduce federal overreach. Okay, Democrats, they want to put out the narrative of fear and control. This does the exact opposite. And you know what? Our institutions have forfeited America's trust long ago, and we need to rectify that. They've abused their powers. And Project 2025 has a series of measures, including strengthened checks on agencies, and those agencies that pushed well beyond legal boundaries, those agencies that just completely disregard the Constitution, they need to be held accountable. We have to rein them in. We cannot allow this to continue to go on, and I'm talking about the FBI, the CIA, the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, and a number of other government agencies. We can't allow them to do whatever the hell they want with no accountability. That's how we got in this position in the first place. So when the left talks about Project 2025 enhancing the power of the executive branch, that is a lie. The document clearly lays out reforms that would actually reduce the size and scope of the federal bureaucracy. It actually diminishes executive authority. If I take a federal agency, understand, the president is the chief executive officer of the United States of America. The president is in charge of the bureaucracy. Well, if I put out reforms and reduce the size and scope of the federal bureaucracy, doesn't that diminish executive authority? Doesn't that decentralize power? And that's what it does. It actually returns power to where it rightfully belongs in our system of federalism. The states, the local governments, and the people. Now contrast that with what the Democrats in the Harris campaign push. Free health care, free college, unconstitutional student debt forgiveness, universal pre-K programs. Now, these aren't free. And guess what? You could tax the rich 100% of their wealth. It won't cover any of this expansion of government. Okay? It'll be like a smidgen. But Democrats, they know. Just tell the people you're going to give them stuff. That's how you get votes. And they've also conditioned people to think with emotion rather than use reason and logic. I mean, beware of the politicians and the parties promising you everything. Think about it logically. If it were really that simple to do, these programs would have already existed. The truth is, these programs aren't simple. They're extraordinarily expensive. They're mostly failures. I mean, They want to do universal pre-K program. We can't even educate K through 12 right now. Student proficiency levels are at their lowest in our history. And so we're going to pretend, let's just create another wasteful $1 trillion program? They're not talking about reforming education at all. Instead, they just continually lower standards. And guess what? If you want to do all these programs, all you're doing is empowering the federal government over every facet of our lives. Once government controls every facet of our lives, are you really sovereign as a people? Do we really have the idea of self-government anymore? And then what happens when we can't sustain the growing national debt? Because sooner or later, that entire house of cards collapses. And what do you think is going to happen when it collapses? See, the Democrats and the bureaucracy constantly push for government expansion, more control, centralizing power. They continually warn about threats to democracy, yet they want this all-powerful federal government. They want an all-powerful bureaucracy to become the fourth branch of government. Remember one thing, the government and bureaucrats have always been and will be the biggest threat to any free society. The Democratic Party, they seek greater centralized power. They want to undo federalism in the system of checks and balances. They want to eliminate the independent judiciary. We just heard from is he a current president or former president? I don't know. But we just heard how he wants to install term limits, pack the Supreme Court. We've heard from people like Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who wants to turn the Senate into a more representative body. We heard from numerous Democrats about the idea of nuking the filibuster, getting rid of the filibuster, including Kamala Harris has said she wants to get rid of it. They certainly want to abolish the Electoral College. They've made that abundantly clear. They've opened our borders, prioritizing those illegally here over American citizens. They defunded the police and pretend the criminals are the victims and the victims the criminals. You have many that want to impose speech controls, banning what they deem as offensive and hate speech. Some even go as far as saying the First Amendment is a design flaw of the original Constitution, like Richard Stengel, a former Obama person. So think about that logically. While Democrats and the bureaucratic class sound alarms about threats to democracy and freedom, all they want to do is empower the government further. Wonder why? Because when they empower the government further, government has more control over our lives. It diminishes our rights. Understand, we're always giving something up. Everything is a series of trade-offs. And so how much liberty are we going to lose with this massive government expansion? They want to reimagine America, where citizens obey without question and accept only those liberties which they deem permissible. And this stands in stark contrast to Project 2025, which wants to return power to the people and the respective states. And again, I understand seizing control of the narrative. It's not easy when you're up against the media, the Democratic machine, much of big tech and the bureaucracy. It's not easy, but it is doable. Given the abysmal state of affairs here in the United States, Republicans have so much material to work with, and they should be out there every single day, holding press conferences, going to neighborhoods that they've long ignored for decades, appearing on far-left networks to push back against the media manipulation. And they need to present the alternative vision. They need to focus on solutions and strategies. They need to be optimistic and show there is another path. I said it before, this election should not be close at this point. Given everything that's going on, Republicans should be on the offense each and every single day. Trump should be on the offense each and every single day. And yes, Trump needs to a little bit more message discipline, right? You shouldn't waste 20 minutes in a speech attacking Governor Kemp. Because guess what? People may not like Governor Kemp out there from Georgia. I don't care. It's not going to win you over a single vote. And Trump didn't earn a single vote by going after Kemp for 20 minutes. And that 20 minutes could have been spent on highlighting the failures of the administration and promoting a new outline for where the United States should go under a Republican president. Emphasize federalism. Highlight how you want to reduce federal overreach and return power back to the people. Talk about economic solutions, that you want to bring down the costs, and you're going to do it by increasing energy production, creating jobs, improving the overall economy, injecting stability within the system, reducing regulation, burdensome regulations on businesses and individuals. Talk about a failed education system where we spend over $1 trillion per year, yet student proficiency is abysmal. Advocate for things like school choice, right? Because school choice Well, that actually helps the most vulnerable in our society. That's who it helps. That's who it benefits. It doesn't benefit the rich, wealthy elite. Actively promote that. Talk about our healthcare system that does nothing to address poor health and does everything to do to just maintain it. Talk about the border. Why sovereignty is so important, why border security matters so much, and talk to those people that have been impacted in the poorest communities by this invasion. It's time for Republicans to wake up, seize the narrative if you want to win 2024. Call out all the misinformation that's being spewed by the media that's trying to manipulate the American public and present a positive vision for America's future. It's really not that complicated. Like, this is all common sense stuff. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure this out. If Republicans can do that, they'll win in November. If they can't, they're going to lose in November. And we're pretty much doomed after that. Now, if you found the content of this episode informative, please leave the P.A.S. report a 5-star rating. Take 30 seconds to write a review on any podcast platform that allows it. Apple and Spotify do. And also share this episode with your family and friends and on social media. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I'll be back on Monday with another great episode of the P.A.S. Report podcast.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at P.A.S. Report.